Supporters of President-elect Donald Trump are continuing to celebrate his triumph. Victory for the Republicans is particularly sweet in the so-called swing states. To understand what voters now expect from a new Trump presidency, DW's Aya Ibrahim visited Bucks County in Pennsylvania, a swing county within the Keystone State that hadn't been taken by a Republican presidential candidate since 1988.
At this store in a Pennsylvania suburb, Trump's political comeback has been good for business.
This money's for Donald Trump. Make America great.
Sales have been soaring since Election Day.
That is awesome.
We were absolutely swamped. Customers came in, they cleaned us out. One of the things that we featured yesterday, and it's been selling very briskly, are our Trump One flags, our 2 cat-themed shirts. We sold a ton of them yesterday as well, and that of course makes fun of the whole illegal aliens in Springfield, Ohio, because we figure so long as they're going to keep allowing illegals into the country and they're not going to do anything about it, we're going to continue to lay the satire on nice and thick.
But it isn't just provocative statements that moved voters, Lisa says. It's the policies Donald Trump promises to implement, she tells me, that won over even lifelong Democrats in her town of Bensalem in Bucks County.
They did not feel as though what the Democrat Party was fighting for anymore was the things that they believed in. Economic basics was a huge thing. Economics drove a lot of it.
That's something we've heard over and over again here. The economy, but also immigration and foreign affairs, simply felt better managed under Donald Trump, a sentiment his campaign capitalized on in purple counties like this one. Until November 5th, Bucks County had not voted for a Republican president in 35 years.
For weeks leading up to Election Day, places like these in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, were fiercely fought over by both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That effort paid off for the president-elect, who won the county by a little over 500 votes.
That slim margin means expectations for Trump's second term are mixed here. In nearby Doylestown, we spoke to residents about what they imagine the next 4 years will be like.
More money in my pocket, close the border down, illegal aliens, yes, going to be much better.
It's kind of been a worst case scenario with us not only losing at the presidential, but also losing the Senate and the House. It's looking a little bit grim right now. I worry that someone like him without those safeguards.
My grandson was in class with a friend who is Latino who was hysterical crying. He's so scared.
I think America is going to be great again. Already we're seeing it in the stock markets going up.
Angry that we can't move forward, that people want to stay in the 50s. And I just feel like they want women to be in the kitchen pregnant and no shoes on.
Back at the Trump store in Bensalem, Lisa is sure a second Trump term won't just be good for America, but for her shop as well.
For the longest time, he was saying, America first. And so America first themed merchandise has been very popular here. So there'll be other things going forward.
Whether those things will help bridge the differences between residents of Bucks County is unclear.
So let's get across to Bucks County for more and bring in our special correspondent, Aya Ibrahim, who filed that report. Hi, Aya. In these conversations you were having with Trump supporters, can you tell us a little bit more about what stood out to you?
I think it's their almost unconditional devotion to Donald Trump as a personality. This isn't really about the Republican Party anymore. And even though issues are important to them, it really is the Trump personality that attracted them the most to the Republican ticket. It's an emotional devotion, almost visceral at times. And they're really unable to see any flaws in Trump's personality. I asked Lisa, who we saw in the report there, if she could have just 10 minutes with the president, what would she tell him to do differently in his second term? And she said, the only thing I would tell him is that surround yourself with better people this time. Otherwise, she really had pretty much no criticism, neither to his personality, his rhetoric, even though that alienates a lot of fellow Americans. So it's that devotion that I think is really, really striking. And it doesn't matter how many times I speak to Trump voters, that's always just a very, very interesting experience to hear.
It certainly is. I'm curious how much you think misinformation played a role in this election and in swaying some people to vote for Donald Trump.
I mean, when it comes to Donald Trump's rhetoric, it is really often difficult to separate misinformation from the facts. We really are in a landscape where it's almost impossible to untangle these things the way that he approached speaking to his voters and his supporters. But I'll say that having been here for a few weeks, I think it's issues that really matter to a lot of people that voted for Trump and people that swayed towards Trump from the Democratic camp. He was running against a candidate, Kamala Harris, who said that she was the candidate for change, but was part of the incumbent's administration. And that idea that she stood for change, but somehow was not either able or willing to implement it in the 4 years that she was part of the administration, is something that she could not shake off. And so it was inevitable that Donald Trump made a more convincing argument to so many Americans who are concerned about issues like immigration. Let's just take that as an example. We heard Lisa in that report there say, refer to Donald Trump's statements about migrants in Springfield, Ohio, eating pets, which have been denied by Springfield officials. But there is sort of a truth that resonates with a lot of his voters here, which is that you had a lot of immigrants cross through the southern border illegally and that were then given legal status after the fact. And most people will tell you they have an issue with illegal crossings through the southern border. And that issue, among many others, Donald Trump was just able to make the more convincing argument. Now, it is unclear how he will be able to follow through with his promises, but his rhetoric, even though it may have some misinformation, resonated with a lot of voters way more than Kamala Harris. He was just the more convincing candidate in this election.
Aya, just very, very briefly, we know Trump's starting to put together his team now. He's named his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, as chief of staff. How do you see his new administration shaping up?
Well, it's certainly, Susie Wiles has worked for Trump for a long time. She's known to be loyal to him. She is a longtime political operative. She first entered the stage working for the Reagan campaign in the 80s, and certainly someone who is dedicated, devoted, and loyal to him. Little is known about her, but we can... the reputation that she has is that she's a very effective operative with a lot of organization skills. But we don't know cabinet names yet, so it's just something that we're going to have to follow as that shapes up what that cabinet's going to look like.
That we will certainly be doing. Thank you so much. That is DW's special correspondent, Aya Ibrahim. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has now commented publicly on Donald Trump's election victory. Speaking at an event in the Russian city of Sochi, Putin praised Trump and said Moscow is ready for dialogue. He suggested Donald Trump's remarks about ending the war in Ukraine quickly deserved attention. And while campaigning, the U.S. president-elect, of course, had said that he would bring about peace in Ukraine within 24 hours, although offering few details as to how.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
And here's what Americans have elected Donald Trump to do. Few issues loomed as large in the campaign as control of the borders. Illegal crossings reached record levels last year. Trump whipped up fears of criminals entering the country.
Murderers, many of these people murdered more than one person. One did 7. These are not people we want in our country.
And although migrant crossings have dropped in recent months under tough new measures, Trump has promised to go further. He's vowed to use the National Guard to arrest millions of migrants and stop the release of asylum seekers pending protection decisions.
On day 1, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history to get the criminals out.
No rhetoric was needed to remind Americans about inflation. Food prices have spiked around 20% since the last election. To provide some relief, Trump promised tax cuts for both corporations and low-income workers.
No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors.
But how to pay for his giveaway? Trump says he'll slap tariffs of up to 20% on imported goods, though economists warn US consumers will pay the cost.
I'm going to impose a tariff on the outside world, and they're going to pay it. The most beautiful word in the dictionary to me is tariff.
Trump's opponents were motivated by restrictions on reproductive rights. He took credit for appointing 3 of the Supreme Court justices who overturned the constitutional right to abortion.
People have wanted to end Roe v. Wade to get it back to the states. We did that. It was an incredible thing, an incredible achievement. We did that, and now the states have it, and the states are putting out what they want, the will of the people.
At this election, several states voted on abortion measures. Pro-choice advocates won in 7 states, but lost in 3 others. Trump insists he has no plan to restrict access further. But when he's back in the White House, he has pledged to replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, which expanded health insurance access. And although he admits he has no plan for what could come next, Trump insists he and his team will
make America healthy again.
Voters have made Trump president again, this time with even greater authority to carry out his agenda.
These are our friends.